Hello, everyone. Can everyone hear us? So, Scott, we got a special day today. What's happening?
Absolutely. Oh, boy. We're starting with the book club. So let's see here. What are we going over? Chapters 1 and 2 of the book club. We've got all kinds of great guests coming in to help us out with that. But first, maybe we should take care of some housekeeping.
Yes, please do.
All righty. Well, let's see. First of all, how about the do's and don'ts? We want to be decent, constructive when interacting with each other, on the chat. I realize it's YouTube. Let's try to be constructive anyway. Don't post anything that's adult content, rude, offensive. I mean, come on, this is common sense. Don't advertise or promote things. Okay, this is not somewhere to try to get people to buy your stuff. Don't spam. If you post a question, please trust that we see it. There are a lot of questions. There are questions that have been asked before we came on the air. There are questions that were in Twitter and that we want to get to. Just because we haven't answered your question yet doesn't mean we're not going to get around to it. And if you post it twice so that you can see it 2 times in the same chat window, you're definitely spamming and you're probably not going to get answered. Harassment of any kind is not tolerated. That's pretty much common sense. You'll not only be blocked from here, but one of the things that we do in the Flutter community is that once you're blocked from one place, we share our ban lists. So it's one of the things that has kept it very decent. If you get banned from here, it's going to go over and translate to a ban in the Slack and in a number of other places. So behave.
So after that strong note, so me and Scott are going to take a sideline on the beginning part of this as we have some wonderful hosts with us. And I'd like to on board Daniela and Ezra. Hello, welcome. Ezra, you're muted.
Yeah, hello.
How are you two? Doing well?
Yeah, super excited. Let me just start with myself. And I'm Ezra, one of the leaders of Flutteristas, and I'm working as a full-time developer. And I will be hosting the show with the Danielle Cox, and you will see us a lot in the next weeks to come. And we are here to help you stay motivated and, reading through the book, which is a great introduction to Flutter. And yeah, Danielle, please.
Hi, yeah, of course. I'm Danielle Cox. I have been one of the leaders of the Flutteristas for quite a while now, ever since Emily left. And absolutely, let's do this.
Daniela, do you have some slides for some of the people that we're going to introduce?
Absolutely. Let's do that. All right. So okay, well, we had the do's and don'ts here. All right. So there have been a lot of people that are involved in this. And because of that, we've got a lot of people that have been involved in this project, both from the book standpoint and also from the book club. And some of them are here today, and some will be here in the future. And that's one of the things that's great about the book club is we're going to be going on for quite a while here, and we will have guests every week, and we're going to run through this way.
So we're going to introduce a few of them that we have now right now. So Stephanie, I think we have a Stephanie with us.
Absolutely. Welcome, bring Stephanie on.
Hi.
She's important both for the Flutteristas and for this book.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Patterson. I live in Portland, Oregon, USA, and I am the tech editor for Flutter Apprentice as part of the book team at raywinderlich.com. I am also a co-leader of the Flutteristas. If you're not sure what a Flutterista is a woman, non-binary, who has a passion for Flutter. And we are so happy to have so many Flutteristas actually involved in this book club. Danielle, Ezra, and then Sarah's behind the scenes right now. So it's awesome. We have one of our authors here today. It's super exciting. Let me introduce you to Mike Katz.
Hello, thank you. Hi, I'm excited to be here. I'm a longtime mobile developer, one of the authors on Flutter Apprentice, and just excited that we get to share the past couple months of work for our team with you all.
Thanks so much for joining us. I appreciate it.
So I'm gonna let me and Scott take a back seat here, and the show's over to you guys. And I think there's a couple more people you want to introduce, and then we can get to where we go from here. So we'll see you guys later.
Bye.
Of course, I had to talk while muted. Always. We did miss one thing I want to go over real quick, if y'all don't mind. I'm sorry, Simon happened to miss a little piece of housekeeping. That is, we wanted to go over some of the things with Flutter Community. Now, Flutter Community, in case you don't know, is responsible for a lot of great things in the community, such as the Flutter Community Medium that has over 600,000 minutes read every single month. We also have the Flutter Community Slack with, get this, can you believe it? 15,000 members. 15,000. You can get to a lot of this through the official Flutter website's community page right there. And also, we have the Flutter Community GitHub. This is for packages that don't have maintainers anymore, but we don't want to see them get lost. Flutter Community is also behind Hack 19, Hack 20, Hump Day Q&A, where we bring you great guests such as Kevin Moore from the Flutter team and product managers, Miriam and Chris. So we also provide speakers for your GDG events and also larger events such as DroidCon, Flutter Europe, and also Geekly's Flutter Global Summits. After Interact, we had 12 people on a great panel over in New York. And then we also do things like the 30 Days of Flutter, Flutter Vikings, and the Flutterista Conference. Last but not least, well, almost, we have interviews. Jay interviews people such as Nilay, and then Brian Egan, Martin Jarrett from Nevercode, and Philip. Anybody notice, are Martin and Philip really tall, or is Jay really short? I don't know. Anyway, there are also videos such as Value Notifier with that handsome guy. And just about every week, we do Hump Day Q&A. So one of the things I do want to point out, though, is I said just about every week. Unfortunately, we're all getting very, very busy. It's kind of hard to line everything up. But what we're looking to do, hopefully, is hire a community manager. But to do that, we need your help. Okay, Flutter Community needs your support to be able to keep bringing you the kind of great content that we have been, because Simon and myself and Nash and a bunch of people were doing this as our hobby projects, and we don't have hobby time anymore, unfortunately. So if you head on over to Flutter Community Patreon at patreon.com/Flutter_community, really appreciate it. You can help us out. There will be some other tiers being created, and the highest tier is Simon's hero. You can be Simon's hero. He will study your code to learn to be a better Flutter developer. And if you become Simon's hero, I will personally go get you a custom t-shirt made and send it to you. Okay, so with all of that said, I'm going to get out of the way.
Of people that are part of the book club here, and can you show that for us, Simon? All right. Well, you've already met Ezra and myself, and if you didn't already know Simon and Scott, they just did it. And so, we're all community. Like Scott said, basically volunteers doing this. We're enthusiastic about it. We do have a couple of people that are actually from Google, and one of them is Sarah. And Sarah, can you come on and tell us a little bit about what you're doing now with Google?
Hi. I started about 2 months ago to help Nilay as a Flutter Community Program Manager. And I'm mostly in charge of the Flutter Meetup Network, which I will tell you about a little bit later. But as part of my new job, I'm helping to organize this book club. So I'm excited to be here. I'm also a Flutterista and previously a Flutter developer, but now I'm more on the people side. Yeah.
That's awesome, Sarah. We love having you around.
I love this community so much. I'm so happy to be here. I am very lucky that I have such great coworkers now as well. So, Craig?
I'm not sure if Craig is here right now. He may have stepped away for a second.
Okay.
Oh, he is back. Yes, he is here.
Yes,
Yay.
he's back.
Hey, Craig. Can you tell
Hey.
us what your role in all of this is?
Well, I'm currently on the core Flutter DevRel team, and I'll be reading this book alongside everyone and talking through the concepts of each chapter, and we'll be kind of pseudo live coding an app that captures all of those things. So it should be pretty exciting.
That's awesome.
Thanks.
That's awesome. And we're glad to have you here, Craig. That's always nice with that. I think we're up to the point.
I'd love to tell you.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I think we're up to the point, Sarah, if you could tell us what we're actually doing here.
Yes. I need to share screen. Share screen. Share screen.
Yeah, let's talk about the book club.
Yeah, here we go. Can you see my tab?
We could briefly.
Can you see my tab? All right, let's do a slideshow then. All right. So yes, I am the Flutter community program manager with the Flutter DevRel team, and we've put this book club together for you. I hope you'll enjoy us and read through to the end. So the book is a wonderful introduction to Flutter, and if you have no Flutter experience at all and you just read from the start and make it through to the end, you're going to be a pretty good developer, or you're going to know the key points of the framework by the end. So you're going to go from 0 to hero in 3 months. So it can be hard to motivate yourself to read a 500-page textbook. We know this. So that's why we've created the book club, to keep people motivated so that we can have reasonable reading quantities each week. And so we're going to read a little bit each week. And I'm hoping that as you read, you will join us in coding along a app of your own that is in a subject matter that interests you. So in the book, there are recipe apps. And if you like recipes and cooking, then that's great. Go make yourself a recipe app like in the book. But maybe it could be more interesting for you to choose a different topic and make your own app so you can see the concepts being applied in a more general way. So at the end of this series, you will have a publishable app. And we hope that you can share it with your friends and family and the larger community of learners that are here reading the book with you. So yes, each week you will please complete the reading assignment and work on your project app, which will apply the concepts that you've learned from the book to make your app better. And every Wednesday, we will review the content of the book, and we'll code our own sample app so you can see how we do it. And then there will be a Q&A session, and you'll get a new assignment for the next week. And that's it. I just talked about this. So I think I should leave you with an inspirational quote, which is from Tony Robbins. The only impossible journey is the one you never begin. I think just getting started sometimes is the hardest part. So now we're all here starting together, and hope we can follow this journey together. Okay, that's it from me.
That's great. Thank you, Sarah.
So,
book clubs are a lot of fun, and having one that actually joins the interest of Flutter and learning how to code apps is amazing. So thank you. And again, I want to kind of emphasize that as a book club, we're meeting every week now for the next 10 weeks, isn't that right, Sarah?
Yeah. It's around 10 weeks.
Yeah, exactly. So that's going to be fun. What I'd like to do now, Simon, if you could bring Mike onto the screen.
Can I interject something?
Okay, great. And I think we're going to let Sarah and Craig go for right now, and bring Mike on screen. And we'll see. I know we'll see Craig later, and I'm sure we'll see Sarah later too. So Steph and Mike, can you tell us a little bit about how the book came to be and why we have it, and why is it not just a tutorial series or something like that?
Yeah. Sorry, Steph, you want to take that or?
No, you go ahead. And
All
then
right.
I
So
can come in after.
the book came to be, simply at raywinderlick.com, looking to expand the different types of topics that are covered on the site. And Flutter is I don't even want to say it's a new technology now because it feels like it's been around for a while, especially in computer terms. But it definitely a growing, very capable, very exciting technology. So there's a need. The community was asking for materials on Flutter, and then there were those of us who were around that have been dabbling or making apps in it that wanted to make content for it. And why a book? Because we like writing books. A book is a different type of activity than a tutorial. A tutorial, we try to teach like one concept at a time. You get in, you learn a skill, and you get out. Whereas the book is more of a journey. We start off with a slow introduction. We teach some concepts, and we build up, an app over time, as you might a real world example. One of the main raywinderlick.com philosophies is no sample apps, right? We want everything to be practical and useful and reflect what you would do as a full-time developer making an app. So the book is like a complete journey from getting started to deployment, and it's a cohesive thing. There are screencasts, there are video series. There's a whole bunch of tutorials, and people like to learn in different ways. So if you're the type of person that likes having a book and going at a certain pace, then this is a good option. And for some people, that's not how they want to learn, and there are other options available for that as well.
So I want to ask your process about the creating it, and how long does it take, how many people you do it, and it's not the first edition, and how is it creating the second edition? So can you mention about it to us?
Yeah, so there's actually a whole team behind the book. So there's the three authors, myself, Kevin, and Vincent, as well as we have Steph, our tech editor, we have Cesare, Final Pass editor, we have Sandra, an English editor, and there's several other people who are involved in page setting, art design. We have Manda, who's like our, I don't know her exact title, but she wrangles all of us together and gets the book out the door and keeps us on time. So there's a lot of different aspects that go into it. And what we did is we got together as a team, and we came up with an outline for the book. And we said, what are the important things to teach? What's a apprentice level? We actually spent some time debating, does this belong in a book for new people, new to Flutter, or does this belong in a book there are more advanced concepts, and how do we teach this? So there were a lot of things that we didn't cover and would have liked to, but we just seemed like a little advanced or didn't fit into the story. And that's like a multiple week process of going through and just like figuring out what we want to cover. When we started it was I think I'm not even sure if version 1.0 was official yet. So we debated, do we include desktop and web, which we haven't yet, but we're considering that for another edition. So those were some of the considerations that went into the book there. And version 2, when we created, we were working on Flutter 1.0, and now we're at 2.5. So the technology keeps increasing. There were things that you couldn't do before that you can do now. We had some caveats in the book, like, watch out for this, or this doesn't quite work right, and well, those are all fixed now, so we could take out those caveats and basically keep everything up to date with the latest. Even up to the last minute, we were updating screenshots and command line outputs and so on. And I'm sure they're probably out of date now since the book was finalized, and we'll update them for the next edition and so on.
Oh yeah, I guess it's a good time to bring up the fact that you're not the author. You're one of the authors.
That's correct. Yeah.
How did you all decide, to take that approach?
So we came up with the outline together, and what we said, who wants to work on which chapter. So the book is actually broken up into different sections, and you know, I took the first section, Vincent took the second section, Kim took the third section, and so on. So each like set of chapters, you know, has a single author, so it's a little more cohesive and builds up from chapter to chapter.
All right, and that's we love having you here, Mike. But you know, Steph is one of my fellow Flutteristas, so I'd like to kind of bring her on here, and ask her, well, how is Google involved, and how do we get access to this book now for the book club so people can be going along with that? And I'd like to emphasize that even if you haven't read the first 2 chapters, you can still join in with us and keep up with everything else coming up from that. So I've got a couple of questions for you, Steph. One is, you know, how do we come about having this book club as far as Google helping us out? How do they get access to the book? And if you maybe just tell us a little bit about what Ray Wenderlich can do for us otherwise.
So as Mike was talking about, after we published edition 1, because of my Flutter community involvement, I was able to reach out to Tim Sneath. And so I want this on the record, so it's going to be here forever because it's on the internet. Without Tim's assistance and we wouldn't be sitting here doing this right now. One of the things that I will admit, and Mike can probably attest to, is I set out a goal that Google would absolutely love our book. And I was pretty hard on some of the authors and making sure how stuff was written. And when I did my process, I had 3 screens and looking at Google Docs and looking at you know, all the various things plus our book, and going through and making sure everything was there. As part of our development of edition 1, when we had our first few chapters that were made available, those are the ones that are listed free. And Tim loved it. He posted something, you know, we had him involved. He did reading. He and Chris Sells also were involved. Especially with edition 2, and it was really great having their involvement. And so it was kind of interesting. We were talking about doing edition 1 was published in the beginning of June of this year. And it did take us a while to get there. Flutter updates kept coming. And then we had the March event. So then we postponed that because we wanted to make sure we could get all the greatest things. Edition 1 was published without null safety. And then, of course, with edition 2, we'd planned on adding that. And we got word that Google wanted to not only endorse our book, but they wanted to make it free for everyone for 3 months, which was amazing. I can't even describe how I feel about that. It's still, you know, I have to pinch myself every once in a while to think, okay, is this really true? And then I look at all my emails and various things, and yeah, it's true. And so Google made it available, and there's a link, and hopefully Simon or Scott can pop that up on where people can go. Just go to that website, you register for it, and you have free access through January 6th of our online reader, and it's there to use. You also have the opportunity, if you love the book so much and you want to buy it, hint, you can either buy it in print, which there's a link taking you to Amazon to order it. We also have on subscription that are available to purchase, and with that you actually have,
right?
At
Wenderlich has a subscription. Yes.
At raywenderlich.com you can have a subscription, and you actually have access to not just our book. You have access to every book that's available. The professional version, you have every book, every video, all the video courses, screencasts, all of that is included with that. So that's definitely an awesome thing. You also can purchase through Ray Wenderlich to get the EPUB if you want. There's also a PDF version. Right now, I will say that there isn't the link that's there. So once you've subscribed to the Flutter Apprentice free version, you can send an email to support@Raysware. And then that way you can get your copy so you can have it, make your own notes. it's been an awesome journey. We've had support from the Flutteristas, from the Flutter community, from Google, and it has just been awesome. And we want to thank everyone for their involvement there. One thing that Mike had alluded to is, they did the outline. They started with the outline in June of last year. And so they went through that process, and they started writing in September. And so there's the writing process, then it comes to me as tech editor, and then I go through it. Then we have an English language editor that comes in, goes and makes sure that all of our writing is to the standard of what we have for raywenderlich.com. And then it goes to a final pass editor. We have a managing editor. So yes, there's a huge team that all trickles down. I will admit, some things get past us. We're human. And on the site where you go and you get access to the free book, there is a link for the forums. If you find there's an errata discussion, so you can go in and you can let us know if you find something. We can make sure to get that updated. And it'll be in a later edition, depending on what it is. And so it's a community. So we totally hope you love our book. We love it. As you can see, I have both my book and I put the frame on my wall. So I totally am loving the community for doing the book club. The book club came out because Google wanted to help us with getting people involved. And I love seeing the number of people that are watching the video live right now. It's amazing. Thank you all for being here. But we're still here to answer questions. And if you've got a question about the book, the same place you go is the forum. So we can't do it without everyone's support.
Or join us here.
Or join us here. Totally. Be here each week. I'm not quite sure what the GMT time is, but 9 Pacific, from 9 Pacific to approximately 10:30 every Wednesday between now and December 15th, we're having the book club. And Sarah and Craig can give you more information about the details. We have each week, we have a couple of chapters we're going to be talking about. We're fortunate again to have Mike here. He wrote the first 2 chapters. So yay, Mike, did an awesome job. And that's pretty much what I've got here. Can they put up the link again to get to the free access? Thank you.
The one thing I kind of want to jump in real quick is I have the pleasure of spending a fair amount of time with both Ezra and Steph, and this journey with Steph, just seeing how excited she gets every time she gets one of these emails or something. I mean, there have been times where we don't have anything scheduled and she has to jump in and say, "Oh, I've got to tell you this is so exciting." And
yes,
and so it's really been neat to see, and I'm glad I get to meet Mike now, but I still want my copy autographed by Steph. Sorry, Mike.
And it's just a super motivator for all the community people to just follow and just go in it. Awesome. So do you want to discuss the chapter 1 and chapter 2?
Oh, I think it's
the purpose of the chapters.
Yeah, let's bring Craig in actually, and maybe start with if he can start showing us what's going on and tell us how we got there. I think would be a good idea.
Sure. Yeah. So I have some slides. We can just cover the content if we want to get right into that.
Let's start doing it.
There are the slides. Okay. So hi, everyone. My name is Craig Lenz, and I'm on the Flutter DevRel team. And we are talking about getting what Flutter is and getting it installed on your machine. So as you've probably heard, Flutter is a toolkit for building beautiful cross-platform apps. But this, what exactly that means might not be totally clear. It means that from one code base, you can ship what you're building to Android, iOS, desktop for all 3 platforms. So that's Mac OS, Windows, and Linux, and the web, which is pretty exciting. So some more about Flutter. It is written in Dart, and Dart is an object-oriented C-style programming language it has a nice type system that will feel very familiar to anyone who's written any Swift, Kotlin, Java, or TypeScript. And it also has a nice single-threaded event loop, which means anyone with any JavaScript experience will feel pretty familiar. Dart also is just a very pleasant language to learn, in my opinion. So I think even if you come from a different area entirely or are brand new to programming, Dart is a great place to start. Below that, and next up, you've got Flutter has a fully customizable UI, but it also ships with prepared material design from Google and Cupertino design from Apple that are just ready to go right off the shelf. So if you are worried about, if you want your app to look exactly right on Android and iOS, Flutter is ready to help you out right away. But if you also want to have a strong individual brand that you create yourself and then have that be consistent across all platforms, Flutter is also ready to go. Flutter is open source. Flutter is led by Google, but it is contributed to by many. So because it's open source, you can watch its evolution, you can participate in discussions, you can submit feature requests, and maybe most excitedly, you can contribute. And what do we have next here? Oh yes, Flutter is rendered with Skia. So this is pretty different than many other cross-platform solutions. Often, imagine you want a text input in your app, and you're using a cross-platform solution, and it might offer just this abstracted idea of a text input. And then on each native platform that you build to, it swaps that out for the actual text input that is native to that platform. So it'll use an actual input HTML tag on the web, et cetera. And there's some upsides and downsides to this. The upsides, of course, is that is, what platforms are used to rendering and users are used to interacting with. But a downside is that those kind of solutions can only offer things that are shared across every single platform. And the customization of what they offer is also very limited because, again, they can only offer customization that appears in every single platform. And Flutter does this totally differently. Flutter renders everything with Skia, and it renders pixel perfect replicas of what goes on, what is normally rendered on each platform. So this means that customization options are wide open because Skia can render whatever it wants, and it's willing to listen to you for any ideas that you have. And this means that you can be totally consistent, or you can match each platform idiom, and there's just no limitations with Flutter, which is really exciting. Let's see some more great things about Flutter. Flutter has this feature called Hot Reload, and Hot Reload is if you've done native development before, Hot Reload is very exciting. In the old world, a native app, the compilation times are very slow. It takes a long time to build an app from scratch, even in your development environment. And this happens every time you want to visualize a change. And 5 minutes is is fast in this standard, right? So let's say you've got a screen, it's deep in your app that you're iterating on right now, and you realize, oh, this thing is it's 1 pixel off, and you want to make the change. If you are making a native app, then you make the change in your code, you click rebuild, you go get coffee, or you get distracted on YouTube or Twitter or something. And then eventually you remember, oh, I'm working right now. And you come back and you click maybe deep into your app again because it recompiles and launches from the start. So you might have to log in again. Then you have to click, 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 click to get deep in the app. And eventually you get to the spot and you look at the thing and you're like, oh, it was 2 pixels off, I guess. And so you repeat the whole process again. But with Flutter, this feature, Hot Reload, powered by the VM, means that just what you changed in your code is spliced into your running app in less than a second. So, and you stay where you are in the app. That's the stateful part of the Hot Reload. So if you find out 10 clicks into your app that something isn't quite right, maybe it's a pixel or 2 off, you slide it over 1 pixel, 1 second, it just updates in your emulator. And then 2 pixels, no problem. I don't need to waste 5 to 10 more minutes. I'll just make another edit, click save. It slides over into place and you're happy and continuing on your way. So hot reload is one of the most beloved features in Flutter, and I think you're really going to like it. Then the next thing is platform integration. Flutter has C and C++ interoperability. That's a tricky word to say, let me tell you what. And it also has a thing that's called platform channels, which means that you can call directly into Kotlin or Java code in Android, or Swift or Objective-C code in iOS. So anything that is available on the native platforms, you don't have to worry about going without, because you can always just say, forget it, I'm just going to call the native code to like access this particular new hardware that's on a device, or what have you. So there's nothing that is off limits in Flutter. And we chatted a bit earlier about the community, so just kind of gloss over this a bit, but there's a very robust community, a lot of meetups. There's the Slack channel, which has 15,000 members. There's the Discord that you can join freely, and is the core Flutter team hangs around in there. You can hear them, or I guess mostly read what they're typing to each other as they talk about building Flutter day to day. And there's just an army of enthusiastic YouTubers and bloggers, speakers who are producing amazing content all the time. I personally have completed long Udemy courses on Flutter, and their content is often unrivaled, just like this book. It's just so thorough and takes you through piece by piece, making sure you're not missing anything. So you're probably pretty excited about Flutter. I certainly am, and think you should be. But nothing is perfect, and Flutter is no different. So Flutter is not necessarily for everything, and it's probably important to call that out. So Flutter is fine for simple 2D games, but Skia, its rendering engine, is a 2D engine. So both complex 2D games, or really any 3D game, Flutter may not be the best fit. For those simple games, there's a minimalist game engine named Flame, which can get you pretty far. But if you're making a real meaty game, then probably a Unity or Unreal Engine could be a better option. Also, if your app is little more than native API integrations, like if you are making an app that is nothing but augmented reality or a platform-specific machine learning app, then again, a native app could be a better option for you. And lastly, Flutter can make slightly larger binary sizes. So if you want the smallest possible app to run on phones with limited storage, then Flutter can inflate the size of your binary a little bit. Now, of course, the bigger your app gets, then that delta gets very, very small. So if you have a small app, it might, could even double the size of your binary. If you have a very large app, it might add 0.5% or something. But so your mileage may vary there, but it's worth being aware of. Few words about, I keep clicking the wrong arrow. A few words about Flutter's architecture. At the top, there's the Flutter framework and all the plugins. And this is the Dart code that you write, or the Dart code that someone else wrote and you just install and run. This is where you spend most of your time. Under that, there's the engine. The engine is written in C++, and it does a lot of the heavy lifting. As a Flutter developer, you basically never have to think about the engine, but it's there. And then below that is the embedder, and that's what communicates between all the Dart code and the engine, and then whatever operating system you're running on at a given time. But there was that Flutter framework top layer that we said you spend the most time in. And within that, there's more layers. So it's just like an onion of onions, which I think makes sense. But the top layer of the Flutter framework is that UI theme. And so this is kind of prepared, ready to go, attractive widgets that map to platform idioms. So there's Cupertino and Material, fully baked, ready to use, drop in your app. Your users will not be able to tell a difference. But often we've talked about that not being enough, and that you may want to have your own brand. So below that is just kind of a raw widget layer. And you do spend a lot of time here. This is probably the meat of your UI coding in any Flutter app. And here you're able to completely control everything that you want, the styling. You can have, different typography, text inputs, different buttons, controls, sliders, all these kinds of things. And below that is the rendering layer. This is where Flutter starts to lay things out, figure out what's overlapping what should show, what doesn't need to show. Again, Flutter handles this for you. You rarely have to think about the rendering layer. And then ultimately at the bottom is the foundation. And that is where Flutter starts to make calls to Skia to actually draw pixels. And there's some animation controls that are very nicely exposed. You actually do occasionally get down to here because animations are great in any app. And then gesture detection, if the user taps on the app, which widget did they actually hit, right? Flutter takes care of that. And that's all the way down in the bottom layer here. Okay, so installing Flutter. Admittedly, we're going to gloss over this part because A, I don't want to delete Flutter off my machine just to reinstall it. And B, it's different for every operating system. So I could only demo it for people with my operating system. But the instructions in the book are great. So installing Flutter is the next part. And if you have not done it yet, you are not that far behind. Installing Flutter does not take that long. So don't be discouraged. You can easily catch up and follow along with the rest of the book club. And if you get stuck, I get stuck all the time. So that's no problem. Just reach out, and there's all the community channels that have been discussed, and maybe you discuss more at some point. I'm not sure. And those are great places. 15,000 people ready to ask questions with you and answer questions for you. So don't feel discouraged. And lastly, we're going to do a quick hot reload demo. And I am going to need to share my full screen for this because it is not in this slide deck. So I'm going to hop back over here and click share my screen. And I'm going to share this screen, which is first going to be, okay. I think I might be showing the right thing right now, but the only way that I can find out is wait for the delay and see if this shows up on the live stream. But it's not showing up. I don't think it's working. I don't know if we're going to get the live stream or the...
Let's see what's going wrong here. So what screen are you trying to share at the moment, Craig?
My main screen. Oh, actually, no, it didn't just do it. I thought it might have been for a second.
Is the YouTube screen. Is that right?
I'm trying to share my entire monitor because that's where I've got, I need an IDE and the emulator.
Okay.
We could just do this later. We could open the chapter 2 part with the hot reload demo. Maybe that'd be better.
Let's do that. Let's bring some other people back on. So Ezra, welcome back to the stream. You can take it away from here.
Yes. Okay.
Ezra, welcome back.
Welcome back. So, Sarah, are you ready to talk about the community resources? So if you get stuck, then we can talk about it.
Hi. It's been mentioned a few times, but it bears repeating that there is a wonderful community. I would say that the community would be the crown jewel of the Flutter ecosystem, if I do say so myself. So if you get stuck installing Flutter or have questions about the chapters in the book, there are a lot of places you can reach out. And I am going to share a tab and talk about that. This is fun. Share screen, yes. Chrome tab, community. Okay. So, that's the wrong one. So there is the Flutter Meetup Network, which is over 100 groups all over the world where there are active meetups that are having regular events to celebrate Flutter. That is a good place to find friendly Flutter developers that can help you. The organizers of the meetups have also been encouraged to host a book club series in parallel with this. So if there is a meetup in your area, then you can reach out and there might be someone there to help you. although we do have meetups in many countries around the world, there are still a lot of places that don't have them. So there are also some amazing
Sarah?
online resources. Yes?
One thing that I'd recommend is, especially with the virtual environment, if you don't have a meetup in your space, you definitely can go out there and attend them virtually. I've presented in Nairobi, and even one of our authors, Kevin, had presented overseas as well. So even if you don't have one locally, check to see about virtual. The Flutteristas, we host, like right now we're having this meetup for here, and it's virtual. So don't let people that are out there, if you don't have one local, look for one that's streaming.
You're absolutely right. I should have mentioned that. COVID has really opened up meetups to online events, and people are serving the whole world, or at least their local region in their language. So go and find at least someone with your language, and then there's a good chance that they have online events and can welcome you. But if you also want other help, there are a bunch of online resources that are linked to in the video notes, but I'll just go through them quickly here. If you get the book, then there is a official book forum through the Ray Wenderlich site that you can go to and ask questions. And that is specifically for people reading the book. So it's a good place to be if that's where you are. More generally, there is Stack Overflow. There's a lot of existing good questions there, and people are answering new questions all the time as well. And I think the Dev Reddit, the Flutter Dev Discord has been mentioned, but there's also the Reddit, which is also sometimes frequented by the platform team. And there's lively discussions happening there, and you can also ask questions. Flutter Community Slack, 15,000 members, lots of friendly people that want to help you, and the Discord. So there's a lot of places you can get help, and so don't let yourself stay stuck. Don't bang your head against the desk for too long. You can just do it for a little bit. Try and work it out yourself. But if you're there too long, then please reach out. And then of course you can come here, because this is at the end of the day a Q&A show. So I hope you'll come back and stay around for questions. That's it.
And Danielle is back, so we can also take her here. And thank you for sharing this with us, Sarah. And, the Flutter community was always super supportive and answering your questions. And, we can also help you out to just, get rid of the stack that you had. So hope everything will go good. Welcome back, Danielle.
Thank you. We're talking about going virtual more, but then we get susceptible to this. And that's the third time my internet's gone out this morning, which is nice. And I tried to get on my phone, and I've been trying to get back to you all. So anyway, here I am, hopefully for the rest of the thing. So if I'm catching myself back up, we're discussing what we're doing kind of throughout the rest of this. And one of the things that I think we always recommend to people is pick something you like, that you're passionate with, that will help you decide what to do. A, because you can be a subject matter expert on it, and B, you're going to be more motivated if it's something you care about. And so throughout this, in the book, they used a recipe app, and like we said earlier, you're more than welcome to do that. But I know one of the things I really like is astronomy, and I go out and take pictures, and I can only dream of having the astronomy picture of the day from NASA. But Sarah, tell us about what we're going to be doing with this going forward. I think, with our leading through this as we're doing the app.
Sure. So as we mentioned before, we're hoping that you will develop an app in parallel to reading the book, so that you get the chance to practice the concepts that you're learning, because just reading the theory and maybe seeing other people's examples it's not enough to really get it in your brain. So you have to make your own code, your own projects. And I encourage you to pick a theme that you like. And I personally like space and astronomy. In a previous life, I was an aerospace engineer. So the Code Along app that we are doing is using the NASA Astronomy Picture of the Day API. So it's going to be, at first, we're just using like local data that is structured the way the API structures their data. And then later it will be fetching it and displaying it. And it will have a list detail architecture so that you can see high-level information of the pictures in a list, and then you can click on one and zoom in and see more information about it. And that was specifically chosen because the apps that you are taken through in the book also have a list detail architecture. So when you are choosing your personal topic, try and think of something that can be presented in that way, because that will help you to follow along most easily. Of course, you can do something totally different, but this is just our recommendation. So there are
and they can also
a lot of,
and they can also do if they can't come up with something, they can also follow along with what's in the book as well.
yes,
I think I
absolutely.
recommend that anyway. You
Yeah.
know, it's always good to have multiple examples of something.
Yeah, that goes without saying. I should have said
Absolutely.
it.
No, that's okay.
Follow what's in the book, do your own thing, and then you can see what we do. So you can sort of triangulate the concepts, and then you see it from all directions, and you can get a better understanding. So
yeah, that's a great way to learn, because repetition is how we all learn. So follow what's in the book. Sorry. Follow what's in the book, and then also follow along with what is being presented here at the book club as well. That's awesome. And then come up with another solution. Just keep doing it, and your brain will kick in and you'll save it.
Because I for one can't wait to see what all of you do. I think it's
I
amazing.
can't either. I hope
Yes,
that
you can all. Please, you go, Sarah.
I was going to say it's a bit early now, but I'm hoping that as we get later in the series, people will be sharing what they do on Twitter and various places, because I would love to see what people are learning.
This will be awesome to see in the Twitter about what you do. I think I'm a little bit lazy. You know, I don't learn mostly when I'm following a book. I do learn when I just, hands-on, I just dive into it and have my own problems, and I just go Stack Overflow to solve it. So this is mostly the way that I learn it.
Well,
I think you're like all of us.
And another nice thing though about having the book though is it does give you ideas. You know, and you can go through and you can say, I don't really care about scaling recipes, but that made me think of this, and I really care about tracking my Legos or things like that. Whatever it is, you can come up with an idea that can help you. Just the ideas from this can get you started, and that's one of the beauties of the book. That's one of the beauties of this book being available for free for 3 months. We should probably bring that up again. If you haven't already gone and signed up for access, I need you to please do that, and then be back here for the next several weeks, because this is a great opportunity that Google and Ray Wenderlich have gotten together to do for us, and that's something that we need to keep in mind and make sure that we take advantage of, because it's only for a limited time. If I understand this right, after these 3 months, if you want to read it, you've got to either buy a subscription or you got to buy the book. So,
which is okay too, and you don't have to wait to buy it either. There's my little plug. Sorry, but yeah, it is free.
Leave autograph copy stuff. We need to figure out how to work that out.
Okay,
I don't have a print copy yet of the new book.
Sorry.
I think that we should let Craig start.
Let's bring Craig back on. Yeah, absolutely.
Coding.
Yeah, and Craig, you got something for us that kind of represents chapter 2?
I do, and I also have the Lost Hot Reload demo ready to go.
Nice.
There's the screen. Okay, so we were talking earlier about how A, Hot Reload is super fast, which is important for it to be exciting, and B, how it maintains the state of your app. So if you've done a lot of Flutter, or even just a little bit of Flutter, chapters 1 and 2, you've probably seen this counter app. This is the default thing you get when you run flutter.create. And all it does is count. So you press the button and this number goes up as many times as you press the button, like the text says. Now, the way this works, I'm on the wrong window here, aren't I? This is the one. Okay, so this is the hot reload demo. The way this works is you just have a counter number here, and it is incremented. This increment counter function is called every time you press the button and the number goes up. And then set state is a magic function in Flutter that says, hey, maybe redraw everything. Huh? What do you think about that? And so this all happens every time you press the button. Now, what if we realize, this 9 that I have on the screen is too small? I don't, it's not good. I don't know, it needs to be bigger. Okay, but I'm 9 clicks into the app. Maybe I'm deep on some other screen. I don't want to rebuild and click everything all these times as I iterate. So, all right, let's just try headline 3. That's interesting. And I'm going to press save. And in just 1 second, the app re-rendered, but we stay where we were. And this is so much faster. In any native demo, we all just had to go have a bathroom break to get back here. But maybe headline 3 isn't big enough still. Let's try headline 2. Okay, a little bigger. This seems almost right. Headline 1. No, that's way too thin of a text. No one wants that. Okay, headline 2. We iterated so quickly. So that's hot reload, and it's pretty cool, I think.
I love that. As when I came to Flutter and started learning it a couple years ago, and I thought first, the fact that when you create a project, you've already got an app, so you can even get in and look at it. But then the hot reload, yes, awesome. Thank you, Google.
I think that this is a good time also to point out, though, from the humor that comes with the book. They do everybody, for hot reload does an example where you're changing the counter app and you can do it. I know mine was like starting to double the number or subtract 3 or whatever from it to make it go. But what they did in the book, when you get the book and start reading it, is they changed the text from "you have pushed the button this many times" to "thou hast pushed the button this many times," and just to give it that medieval flair. And I just want to point out the fact that
Thank you,
learning
Mike.
doesn't have to be dry. Yeah, learning does not have to be dry. It can be fun.
That was Mike's creativity.
So.
All right.
Are we ready for some chapter 2?
I think we are.
Summaries.
I think we are. Yeah, absolutely. Can you show us about chapter 2?
Yeah. So if you've gone through chapter 2, and again, if you have not, this is not the end of the world. This will just kind of be a little spoiler for chapter 2 for you. But if you have gone through chapter 2, then you'll remember some of these milestones. So one of the first things that they do in chapter 2 is start to take out that counter app infrastructure and put in something that's more specific. Obviously, in the book, it is the recipe app, and we're going with the astronomy picture of the day. So here we have in our main.dart file, we've gotten rid of most of the stuff. We're down to just the material app. This is an important anchoring app in any Flutter app. Actually, you can have a Cupertino app here as well, but they're similar. And then the home attribute, very important on any in the material app.
Yep, there we go.
Oh, yes.
We got it now.
Okay.
We see it.
How long have I been
Wasn't there
talking?
for a sec. Yep.
Okay, great. Anyway, so the home attribute on any material app, very important. And there was a point in the book where they just kind of stopped on a blank homepage, and we've done that as well. We've got this scaffold. This is what gives us the app bar. The color is being drawn from the theme up here, where we've got purple and purple accent. So that app bar is being drawn in the scaffold. And then the body of our app right now is just safe area, which says dodge any notches, dodge the rounded corners of screens. We don't want to have our text clip in there. So it takes care of all of those annoying considerations. And then we just have a blank container. And if you come from a web background, this is kind of just like an empty div. So not a ton going on, but we have also made our data model. So I'm going to pop over to our APOD file, of course, standing for Astronomy Picture of the Day. And this is very similar to the recipe model that they have in the book. we've got, when the picture was taken, what kind of media it is, all these attributes aren't that exciting to enumerate over. Constructor here, all of these fields are optional. But what's interesting is that we're going to prepare, just like they do in the book, where they kind of cook up the spaghetti and whatever all the recipes are. We've got some samples that we're going to use, and these are going to emulate data that we will one day get from the API. So these field names and types and whatnot have not been chosen randomly. They are going to set us up nicely to work with the astronomy picture of the day API in the future. And we've just got some hard-coded examples here. So now I'm going to take a step forward to the next step where we start to display the list. And one thing I've noticed is that sometimes the Flutter hot reload watching system doesn't notice a git checkout, which is interesting. But now I've manually rebuilt, and we're going to pop back over to, let me make sure I have all the right screens up. In main.dart, things are now starting to get a bit more interesting because we no longer just have this empty homepage. It's not even in main.dart anymore. Homepage has now been moved into a new file. And I do recommend, sometimes the book has to pick and choose its battles for which things that it starts to talk about. And folder structure of any big app is kind of an infinite question. So if you start to feel like there's a lot going on in this file, it's always a good idea to break it out and add a new file. So the home page has now been moved over. And we still have that scaffold and the app bar, and our body attribute has the safe area. But we no longer have an empty div or a container in Flutter parlance. We have a list view. And a list view is one of the most fundamental building blocks of any Flutter application. A list view does two things. It, first of all, starts to stack it, or starts to order its children widgets, one on top of the other. You can also make them go left to right or right to left if you'd like. But it starts to order its widgets in one axis or another. And it also sets you up for scrolling, which is important. There's a non-scrolling version of the list view, and that's called a column. And of course, then if you wanted to go left or right instead of up and down, that version is called a row. And those do not include scrolling. The list view does. And that's important because if you've ever used an app before, you've probably noticed that not all the content fits on the screen at any one time. And so we're able to scroll down and look at some of these pictures. And that is coming from the list view. Now, this builder attribute, this is because we may have an unknown amount of these pictures. And oh, gotcha. Okay, I'm hearing that the code, people would like the code to be full screen. So we are going to do this, and then I'll make it even a little bigger. Maybe this is too big. We'll go with this, but we're full screen. I will just bring in the app when we want to look at it. Okay, so the builder here is this is an efficient way to render and keep track of all of the children that the list view cares about. Because imagine you're writing a Twitter clone or something in Flutter, and there's just been a lot of tweets, haven't there? So you couldn't fit them all into memory at any given time. However many the API gives you, you probably don't want to start rendering all of those UI elements at any given time. So this listview.builder just keeps track of how far you've scrolled down in your list of content and only actually concerns itself with rendering things that are about to enter the viewport. So that's a pretty important pattern. And then notice here, we've also kind of farmed out our like what our content is to keep this function from being too complicated and have too much going on here, too much nesting. We farmed this out into its own build a astronomy picture of the day card method. And that's down here. And this just does a little work to figure out what are we talking about, and then ultimately returns more widgets. And this is, card adds some nice UI elements. And we also see the column that we talked about here earlier. The card does not scroll itself. All of the cards scroll, but within a card, we don't scroll. We just want to start ordering things top to bottom. So we use a column. And just like you saw in the book, we've got some different decoration widgets here to kind of get us some nice white space and not feel so cramped. So now I'm going to take another step forward. Okay, check out step 4. Okay. Let's see what all is new about step 4. This one is called add a detail page. Yes. So what we do now, first of all, we see we've got a new file here, detail page. So we're continuing to kind of expand our app, but not put everything in the same file. But a detail page involves navigation. So first of all, I'm going to rebuild. And then I'm going to bring up the picture so we can show navigation. So when I click on this picture, which I just did, the actual click probably didn't come through very dramatically, but we've moved to a new page where we're focused entirely on that picture. The picture has a kind of more pronounced portion of the UI, and then we've got all this text, which came from the API. It's our little secret that we just hard coded it. We can go back again. This is just mobile navigation that everyone is used to. So how did we do this in Flutter? Well, first of all, the UI, where this is back on the home page, so the list of all the pictures, we've wrapped our astronomy picture of the day detail widget in another widget. And this happens a lot where you have something kind of working and then you realize, oh, I need this all to have some new functionality. And so you wrap everything that you had in something that provides that functionality to the whole section of your UI. And in this case, that's a gesture detector, and this is ready to detect gestures. So we've got an on-tap handler. This also doubles as an on-click handler for desktop, basically just any quick interaction from the user. And we're interacting with the navigator, and we're adding a new builder, or we're adding a new material page route with a builder. And this is important that it builds the page later. Notice that this is actually a function. So we aren't building all of the detail pages up front. We're going to wait until the user taps on something. And then we're going to start talking to the navigator, be like, all right, navigator, get over here. I got a new page for you. And then we finally build the page, but they're not all built up front. Again, that would just be catastrophic for memory. And then on our detail page itself, I don't know why it keeps opening these pages in the bottom of the file. What are you doing, VS Code? Here, we just have, again, some more UI that you saw in chapter 2 in the book, and it will start to get very familiar as you build anything in Flutter. All pages, well, I guess not necessarily all, but 99% of pages in Flutter, really the tooltip hovers there are aggressive. Start with a scaffold. And so we again have our app bar. This took a parameter. Actually, let's pop back here. You see that on the detail page, we are going to pass to this new widget, which is an entire page, a parameter. We call it apod, and it is from our samples, and it's the index that we're currently dealing with in our dynamic builder. So that whole chunk of data gets passed to the detail page, and it appears up here in this constructor. It's required, and we call it this.apod, and it's that class that we made up. And then it's available down here below to use in our UI. And again, so we have that scaffold, we have the app bar, we have the body, we have some more decoration, and that is what gets us this UI. Okay, we are almost done. We're moving on to step 5. This was where in the book they add the slider to start scaling up the recipe. We thought, well, what are we going to scale about the galaxy in this picture? And then we realized, well, images of outer space are often pretty high res and pretty cool. So maybe we'll zoom into pictures. And I'll now check out step 5. Add interactive slider. So again, if you've done chapter 2, you saw how they start to manipulate via the slider what the scaling factor is of how much food you're going to make, how many people you're having over, basically. So we have a same slider here, and this, oh, I have to rebuild before we can start looking at it in the UI. Okay. And all right, so this slider is drawn by this UI. I'm going to be clicking back and forth a bit here. Let me actually, I'm going to go back on the full screen code. Sorry, folks. Briefly, for the good of the talk. This slider that we see here in the UI is drawn by this widget. And what's interesting here is that we can supply a function that we want to be called every time the user updates the position of the slider. And what we've done is, scrolling up a little bit, we have wrapped our picture in an interactive viewer. And this is a widget that is provided by Flutter itself. And excuse me, sorry. And it allows you to zoom in and pan around and just kind of check out any part of a UI. So a picture is obviously a great candidate for that. And with the controller that we pass to the interactive viewer, we can start to tell it, hey, this is how zoomed in you should be, as opposed to having it just wait for the user to make controls or to make interaction, gestures, whatnot. So as I start scrolling in here, we see it zooms into the picture, and then I can still pan around. And this, I think, is a pretty nice little effect for, especially in outer space, astronomy app. And this one, I think, is going to be pretty nice zooming in. So let's check it out. Oh, look at all those stars. Actually, look, it kind of blends in with my background, doesn't it? Nice. You can barely tell them apart. So we, at this point, have functionally reached the end of chapter 2. There's more detail in the book, of course. This is just kind of to re-hit some of the highlights and talk about it all together. No substitute for actually looking at the pages of chapter 2 with your own eyeballs. But hopefully this was helpful. And I think now we're going to open it up to any questions, or maybe someone else is talking next, actually. I don't remember. Scott, you are heavily muted.
Of course I'm muted, and my phone is ringing. 2 offenses at one time. How's that? Let's see here. Daniela, how about you? You ready to go?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mike, you ready to come on? I'm waving at people here.
Think so.
And tell you what, how about everybody but me?
Yeah, bye, Scott. All right. Well, he's controlling it, though, so that's part of how he ends up with that. I would love to make a comment of what struck me with Craig's, going through that, and that is something that maybe newer people to Flutter might not realize how common it is. But, we often start off maybe with a text widget that says what we want it to say, and then we keep adding to that. So some, so like what he showed on the hot reload, maybe we change how the text looks, but more often, we add, a button around it, or in this case, the gesture detector, or we add the scalable, or things like that. And that's very much the way that a lot of us will code is you start kind of at the middle part of that, and then you just expand out and add widgets that add to it. And I think that's a very powerful piece. I didn't want it to really be lost. I know we're going to get into that a lot more, but Craig was showing us that from the kind of by example there. But I wanted to point out explicitly that that's what's happening. And by Craig, I also sort of mean Sarah for that part.
Indeed.
Is she's actually the one that created that. So everybody give a nice round of applause for Sarah for going ahead and creating us an example that goes along with it.
One thing I'd like to point out, I really liked how Sarah and Craig used the slider to do the zooming in, where what we did in the book, what Mike did in the book, is basically changing the quantities for the recipe. And it's definitely a great way to show how a widget can be used in different ways. Another reason, as we were talking about earlier, follow the book, do the app in the book, follow what's being done in the astronomy picture of the day. I had to sit there and think about the acronym, and then do your own. So then you can use widgets in different ways and see what's out there.
Well, one thing I'm curious about, Mike, having written chapters 1 and 2, how did we do with our being inspired by that and doing our own stuff?
Yeah, I thought that was great. I love the visual aspect of the astronomy pictures, and It was really, really cool and a nice way of like, having the same, basically the same structure and the same widgets, but a completely different app. And I think that that's like one of the great thing if you think about just the base set of widgets in the Flutter toolkit is you can build much, and if there's not, there's always, you can just, find a package to import. But.
Definitely. I had a lot of fun building this app, and I know that I'm going to have fun in the future chapters building it up. So I would like to just take this moment to mention that for next week, we hope that you can get into chapters 3 and 4, where you will learn about widgets in much greater detail and can make the UI of your app more polished and beautiful and interactive. So please read chapters 3 and 4. And if you feel like tweeting about your app or your experience with the book, it is #Flutter Apprentice. Does someone want to put that on the screen? Scott?
While we're waiting for them to put it on the screen, one of the questions that came in was asking about null safety, and the book does address null safety.
Yes, so does the sample.
And I had somebody ask me, not as part of the Q&A here, but I just wanted to make sure that it was out there, that edition 2, which is the free version, does address null safety.
Yeah, I saw that in the code there. Those are some of the question marks you saw, and that if you're coming from a C place and you don't really recognize what that was, that's what that was there. I hope that everybody, having seen what we're doing with the book club after with chapters 1 and 2, if you've been on the fence and you're still here, I hope that you will go ahead and go get access to the book and read chapters 3 and 4, and let's do this all again next Wednesday.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think now we can take a little break, and then after the break we can.
Sure. Just so people know, if you want to code along, Sarah was kind enough to let her GitHub link be out there, and so that's what's on the screen now. So I just want to point that out to people that that's for the code here, and I would like to also, once again, if you've made it this far and you've been on the fence, go get the book. It's a great thing. There's things to find in there that will help you out. And Scott, if you could just real quick show the link to the book again, that would be great.
I was just going to say, actually, that got annihilated somehow when Simon left. We need it in the YouTube chat, and I can bounce it to a.
It's in
I can make a new banner.
It's in the show notes. So if you just go to the video description, I think it's the first link as well. So flutter.dev/apprentice giveaway. There it is.
There it is. Yay! Now we've got all kinds of stuff up on there scrolling along. It's like we're professionals.
Do we want to take answer some questions, especially if we've got something specific to the book? Because since we have Mike here.
Yes, good idea.
So, now to find questions. Scroll back to the
top. There's a lot of questions.
We have a great one there by Arturo, if we could share that. I thought I knew how to do this, but I don't see it now. But he asks, can you verify the number of divisions in the slider used in the Book for Recipes app? It works better with 9, is what he thinks.
Yeah, and then you get 10 values. So you can play around with it, add more and see what that does to the app. It's kind of an arbitrary, decision just to show the functionality.
Oh, here's a good question. What is the function of the keyword context? I think that's a really good basic.
Well, it's not exactly. Yeah, it's not exactly a keyword. So.
But it's all over the sample code.
But it's everywhere. So exactly. Yeah.
Who wants to field it?
I think
nominate you, Craig.
I was going to say the same thing.
So the word context that you see, that at any given point in your Flutter adventure, you'll often find it in build methods within widgets. is your link back to the larger universe. It's how you find out the screen size that you're currently rendering to. It's how you find out what device it is, the platform. It's how you find out the orientation. It's how you look elsewhere in your app. And maybe we'll get to this later in the course, but there's sometimes in Flutter, you'll have a widget high up that doesn't actually do anything for the UI. It just provides information for lower widgets. It kind of centralizes where and how you pass information around. And that context object as well is how you go back up in your widget tree and find that supplier of information. And all of that stuff is coming in later chapters, but that context keyword is everywhere. You'll type it 1,000 times, and it's really important. Good question.
Speaking of one you'll type 1,000 times, const. And if you are running Flutter lints, you will see this over and over and over. It will put little warnings all over your IDE all day long. Const, basically, you use const when you can set the value of something before you compile your app. And it's good forever and ever. Let's say the color of the sky equals blue. That's pretty much water is wet is a const.
There was an
you can
orange
set
sky
that.
Day.
What's that?
There was an orange sky day.
Yeah. Okay. That wasn't the sky. That was the smoke. But anyway, it's a California thing, folks. Anyway, basically what it does is it makes your app a bit more efficient. It saves a lookup. You don't have to have a setter because you're never going to set it. It's a lot like Final, but even more efficient. So if you're setting a color to be a specific hex value and it's never going to change, that's a const.
And by the way, never going to change means never going to change for this build. Let's be clear about that. If I've got a const that's my favorite color and I say it's purple, and a year from now I change my mind and I want to rebuild the app, I can change it and it can still be a const. I want to point out the fact that it's for this build. It's not changing.
Right. Well, when you compile, yes.
Exactly right.
But
yeah, we can say the compile time.
Yeah. But I guess the follow-up question with that is, and this may be more of a Simon question than anything else, is there any downside to making something const?
It's about how you construct. I'd say yes, there is. It's about how you construct them, right? So you can't construct things from any expression. They have to be constant values in themselves. That means any value that this constant object depends on also needs to be constant. So it has its purpose, and one of those is we kind of touched on this just a minute ago, but we'll cover this. When you use const and your app is compiled, it actually creates those objects during compilation and then ships them inside your app. This means when your app is running, it doesn't recall the constructors and create new objects every time. So it actually gives you a bit of performance boost as well. Minute bit, but it all adds up. So if you find you haven't prompted const, switch to final. That's the other keyword you're going to have fun with. So we'll just leave it there. It gets complicated otherwise.
Well, it's not. We've got that one right there. So basically, const is something you know the value of before you compile the app. Final, you might not know the value of it before you compile the app, but once it's set one time, it's not going to change. Let's say you make an immutable list, which is a list that cannot change. You make it one time. Now that can be let's get away from that example because the contents of the list can change and that gets confusing. Let's say you set an integer at the time the widget is created, and you're never going to mutate it. You're never going to change the value of that integer. That doesn't mean that you can't destroy the widget and rebuild it. That's the way Flutter works. That's why everything that you see just about is final, because they're going to destroy the widget if you change it. You're not going to mutate it. So final is for when you're setting it when it's created, but you're not going to change it during the lifetime of the object. And const is when you can set the value before you even compile.
And kind of going back a little bit earlier, we were talking about some of the stuff. I do want to point out the fact that Mike does have in the first chapter, he talks a little bit about how the system works and what we've got there, and the engine layer and the embedder and stuff like that we have when we're doing things. So I do want to point out the fact that if you're curious about at a high level of what's going on under the covers, definitely even though you may know a little bit about Flutter, you can read that first chapter, and that shows some of that stuff in there.
There's an interesting one that has to do, well, with a lot of opinions, responsive design, but also we cannot forget accessibility settings.
Mm-hmm.
If you start shrinking the text and the user made it bigger on purpose, they might not be able to see it.
Are you talking about,
automatically changing the size of the text?
Yeah, there's nothing
Making
specific
font
you need
size
to do to make your font size responsive. If the user changes their font size in their settings, it will change inside your app, and that's all handled by Flutter for you. On text style, there is an attribute called font scale factor, I think it's called. And that's where you can override it if you choose to. We don't recommend it.
No.
The best way to make your app correctly responsive around font size is to not put fixed sizes. So don't use fixed widths or heights. Instead, use paddings around your text. And that way, if the text gets larger, the padding gets larger and the button gets larger. So therefore, your app is naturally responsive. That is also described inside the book. So you can you'll get to that eventually.
Well, once again, since this is a book club, before we get too far astray, what are chapters 3 and 4 about for next week? Does anybody have give us like a high level of that? So people know what they're getting into.
More
Widgets.
details
They're about widgets.
widgets.
Yes.
Yeah, there's a joke in Flutter. It's not a joke. It's a whatever. It's used almost like that.
It's
Everything's
the
a
truth.
widget. Yeah, everything's a widget, and so that's basically what we're talking about is giving you a set of basic widgets, and then gives us a little more of a flavor, of what do we have besides the different types of widgets. We've got stateful and stateless and stuff like that. And so read up on it so that when you're here next week, we're able to go through that, and we can see what Craig and Sarah have lined up for us.
And that's a good point. I mean, this week's book club is about chapters 1 and 2. It's the introduction. I know we've got there's experienced people out there, and they can answer a lot of detailed questions. Not that the questions aren't welcome here, because we also are on top of the Hump Day Q&A, but there is more in the book. And so you definitely want to, if you haven't yet gone and gotten free access through January 6th, please make sure you do that. And Simon and Scott, one of them, will put that link back up on. There we go. Thank you.
I did want to mention that we've seen a few questions about const and final, and if you're trying to understand the language, because if this is your first time programming, for example, then you might want to, or first time experiencing Dart, then you might want to go check out this website, which is the Dart Language Tour, and this will explain those keywords, show you examples, give you reasons why you might use one over another, and I've put the link in the chat as well for anyone that needs it.
There's also, it's a separate book, so it's not part of the giveaway. At raywunderlich.com, we also have a Dart Apprentice book that focuses on the language itself. And there's articles and all kinds of things too that are on the website too that help with that too, as well as the sources that Simon just shared.
But did you tech edit that book?
No, but the author of the book happens to be who my tryout tech edit was. And I did some other stuff with him. And so I have looked at it, but I have not tech edited it. It's a great book, especially for those who are wanting to learn Dart. I have it on my iPad as well.
I'm going to go through and just pick out a few more questions from the chat, if everyone's okay with that.
Yep.
So this is one, I think, for Steph.
Oh, the paperback versions are available. Just to give people a clue, when you're looking at it online, it's hard to tell.
Oh my God, it's coming.
Edition. This is first edition. Second edition has another chapter in it. This is only 18 chapters. There are 19 in the second edition. But if you go to the website, when you registered and you go in there, there is a link that you can order the print copy. And yes, Danielle, I know what you've asked for. for. I need more commissions if I'm going to be buying books for people and signing them. You could buy one and then send it to me, and I'll send it back.
That's what I'm sure I'm going to do. I'm really not asking for you to send me one for free.
Yeah, it's totally okay. I get it. But I had people sending me messages. So Daniel wants an autographed copy. What about me? So anyway, yes, you can get a print book. There are multiple options for being able to get the book. And the same holds true for all of the books on raywonderluck.com.
There's a question that is a throwback to the early days of Flutter.
Okay.
At the end of that question, it says, it feels bad to find out a similar widget exists after you went to all the trouble to build something manually. And
oh my God,
some of us actually have a coffee cup that says, there's a widget for that.
Yes. I don't have one, but I want one.
It's like you go through 300 lines to write something, and then Simon looks at it and goes, but yeah, there's a widget for that.
So actually, I'd recommend that everyone looks at the Flutter cookbook on the flutter.dev website. Yeah. There's lots of examples of using these. There's also a widget catalog, which also helps you find widgets. But in truthfulness, if you just go to this api.flutter.dev and find any widget, you'll find that there's a parent widget class. If you click on that, it will show you all the classes that implement widget. And inside that, you'll find all the available ones. There's loads. They all have descriptions. You can go read up about them.
Yeah, I also discovered a lot. Oh my God. All of us just started to talk. But I also just discovered multiple widgets with the Flutter of the Week. You know, with that series.
Yes.
I also discovered a lot. Yeah, widget of the week.
There are what, 70 of them now, Craig? Something like that?
Over 100.
Is it over 100?
Well, yeah, but I mean public. I don't know how many that you've got, in the back room that you haven't released on YouTube yet.
On YouTube, there's over 100.
We're talking
the 100th one was the Flutter logo.
Oof.
Oh, right, yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, there's also this show that, if you can sit all the way through it, it's really kind of boring.
Super boring.
That's the boring show, right? Yeah.
Yes, the boring show.
There's
so that's pretty good.
Another Flutter Dev YouTube. So subscribe if you haven't done it. Subscribe to the Flutter Community YouTube channel, but also subscribe to the Flutter Dev YouTube channel, because what we're talking about, if you've never seen the Widget of the Week or the Boring show, those are all on there. It's awesome.
Craig, what were you going to say?
I heard a funny story yesterday, actually, from Andrew Brogdon, who's one of the old Flutter DevRel folks. Some of you may know him. He shared the inception of the Widget of the Week series, which is great. It's 100 plus 2-minute little quick hitter videos that completely explain a widget for you. But he said that he came up with the idea for that series because he got tired of proposing the development of widgets that already existed. So to the question of, do I have to remember all the widgets? I mean, no, you definitely don't, because it's quickly becoming impossible. But also there's more esoteric widgets, and then there's very common, just your base Lego type of widget that you use in all sorts of things. And as you get into it more, certainly those common ones, they really start to feel nearby as you go to reach for something. And then the esoteric things, you might think like, oh, this certain scroll or this certain interesting behavior. And that's the time where you can just kind of skim that API doc that Simon was talking about and see if anything jumps out at you as like clearly being named what you want, but keeping the whole catalog in your head is not required or possible, I don't think.
There's actually an interesting one that was on Widget of the Week actually just now, which was Flow. Flow is really underutilized by a lot of people. It's quite complicated to use, so it's not for beginners, but Flow does solve a problem, which is it gets high performance animations and movement of things on screen, which is really helpful in some certain situations. We actually have a question here. What is a widget?
Chapter 3.
Yeah. Join us next week.
So there you go. Read chapter 3. handles that one. There are two other beginner questions though I noticed in here.
Wait, we gotta
one
answer. We
real
gotta
quick.
say a little bit about it.
Yeah, we still should answer, but definitely read chapter 3.
I mean,
there's your answer.
I want to know, what is a widget for each person? Why don't we do that? Like, what does widget mean for each person? So,
Mike,
I'll go around.
we need Sarah here.
Everything.
Our English language editor could not get the grasp of what a widget was. By the time we get through the book, she's like, I finally understand what a widget is. Because she's not reading it from a technical perspective. Keep that in mind. She's an English language editor. And so, we kept talking about widgets, and it was quite fun to try and explain that to her. It's too bad she's not here. We could have her explain it.
So hang on. So Steph, I think you've answered there. Daniela, what's a widget from your perspective?
Everything.
Everything's a widget. Ezra, come on, let's do this quick.
I would say just like a functional, a little package that I can use it in everywhere. It can be a little the smaller one, or it can be a big one, but something that works well. I would just say it a widget.
Craig?
If you have ever used React and you have seen a component, then you're now up to speed on a widget. But if you've not, I would describe a widget as an atomic piece of often UI logic. We spoke earlier about how some widgets don't actually impact the UI. They just supply information to other widgets. So that UI detail is not, fixed. That's not ironclad. But yes, it's a class that serves one role in your app, often UI based. And just like Ezra said, you can, they should be reusable. Reusability is desirable in widgets.
And often they're wrappable, So a widget typically has a child.
Or children.
Yes.
Or children, And that's not always true, but that's typically true too.
There's actually a base concept for 3 types of widgets: leaf widget, single child widget, and multi-child widget, if you want to know. There you go. Anyway, Michael, go on. What is your concept of a widget?
Man, all the good answers taken already. So I would go with a widget is something that builds other widgets.
Ooh.
Just to be recursive about it.
Widgetception.
Okay.
Sarah, do you have any last minute?
Yes, Sarah.
Oh, it's hard to add to this. I feel like everything's covered. I think I personally conceptualize it in UI terms. So for me, it's like a little, like a block, and then I can like put the blocks together to build the UI. Except the block metaphor is not perfect because you can like put blocks inside of other blocks. So it's a very flexible block, you could say.
So historically, widgets have always been a small component of the UI from all operating system platforms, right? The term widget has been around a long time, but in Flutter, it takes it to the next level, and we'll learn more about that next week. Right, moving on. Next question. Do you have any questions, Scott?
Let's see here. There were a couple of them real quick. Had to do. I'll let you have the key one. I'll take the one that is late versus final. So again, from the same string. Const, you set it before you compile. Final, you set it when you create the object. Late has to do with the fact that your variables have to be nullable or non-nullable. If it is nullable, then you don't have to instantiate it. If it is not nullable, then the compiler is going to expect that you instantiate it when you create it, when you call the constructor. But maybe you have another function you have to call in order to be able to set the value of that. That's when you use late. So the constructor is called, a non-nullable widget is declared. The compiler goes, hey, there's no value here. Oh, wait a minute. It's marked late. So we'll go run this other function and then get the value for it.
And what's so funny is you can do late final as well.
Oh, shut up. Anyway.
I saw this the other
someone
day,
was
and
asking
I'm like,
for an example of
what is
when to use
this?
keys.
He blew my mind when he wrote that. Oh, he blew my mind when he wrote that. I'm like, okay, stop, because I was watching him code. Okay, if people don't know, Simon is the Flutter whisperer. We aren't kidding. He knows everything about Flutter. But I'm sitting here and I'm watching him code, and he did that. And I'm like, stop. What is that? And what are you doing? So
funny story.
Come on. Let's
Funny
move on. Let's move
story.
on. Questions.
No. He knows what I'm going to say here.
I have no idea.
Funny story. Nash came
embarrassing.
up with the name the Flutter Whisperer. And Simon said that if he ever mentioned it in public, he was going to kill Nash.
Oh my god.
That's one of those nicknames that somebody else slapped on him that he didn't particularly want, but now it's tattooed on his forehead. So
I've also seen it referenced in other written materials where Simon, in parentheses, the Flutter Whisperer.
Right, just moving on. Right. Next question. Let's just
somebody did ask about when to use keys.
When to use keys.
So that was the other one that I was going to pass to you.
I'm going to actually quickly mention something about this because you don't have to use a key on any widget, full stop. That's the first thing. However, there's one exception to that rule, and that is if you have widgets that are the same type that are siblings. That is, let's say you have a list or a row and it contains the same widget. Normally you want to put a key on them, and that way when the UI rebuilds and you remove a widget, it doesn't confuse them. But in essence, I wouldn't have to worry about putting keys on any of the widgets. Most practical purposes don't require it. There are some instances where you want to access the state of a widget, in which case you want to use a global key. Other than that, what you'll probably be looking at is what's called a value key, or just using the key constructor to create a value key. And that would just provide an extra label to your widget. Those can be used in several situations, primarily for your app running, not really required. But testing is a great use of using keys. So that allows you to find a specific widget and then you can perform some action on it. So verify the button works or the color changed right or whatever it might be that you're doing in your UI. Anyone else?
Just make sure you use testing.
Right.
Yeah, I mostly use the keys while I'm writing some tests. Sorry for interrupting.
No, it's okay. Simon mentioned having siblings that are right next to each other. Flutter will have a hard time knowing if it has a list of children in a column or a list view, for example, and from one frame to the next, stuff changes in the list. It'll have a hard time knowing, did the values within these change, or did something get removed, or did something get inserted? Like it just can't know. It's ambiguous from Flutter's perspective, and keys are what disambiguate that. Maybe you put the ID of each record from the database in the key. Can be anything as long as it's unique. And then when you start moving around your UI, maybe you have swipeable, dismissible items in the list. Flutter will always know what's going on.
There's also warnings in those widgets if you don't provide a key. It will tell you need to provide a key for you to use this widget.
Yeah.
So
one thing you'll see in, sorry.
No, go ahead.
One thing you'll see in the projects that go with the Flutter Apprentice at the root level, you're going to see an analysis. Oh man, my brain just fried. It's a YAML file analysis option.
That's YAML. Yeah.
Wow. Anyway, it's there, and so as you're working through, you'll get warnings. So we put that in there to help you write better code. So that's what's sending you the warnings, just to give you a heads up. Because
there's a great package, I think, that the app's using. That's called Flutter Lints, and that's a new package which takes place of the original Pedantic. Sorry, Pedantic. That was the Pedantic package. And
Flutter Lints is the official one now.
Yeah, there's now the official one. And that will give you by default warnings like about the const when you might not be doing things right, if you're missing something. So yeah, anyway. Let's see what other questions we've got in the chat. This one
they need to change the name of that package to NAG.
NAG.
Yeah, Craig, can you take that back for us?
Take that back as feedback, right? Can Flutter really build great apps as native language, Java and Kotlin? Yes. We wouldn't be here if we didn't. I mean, so we've seen this a lot. Like, it's kind of interesting that there's certain things that you try and do with a native UI, and to do it, you have to do a lot of code, animations, renesting children, moving widgets around the screen. It ends up being really complicated, and that's where Flutter really comes into its own. That you can do all this kind of stuff and still have the native look and feel of your original app and the performance you're going to get. And there's no other cross-platform product that I've seen. I've tried quite a few of them that actually gives you the native look and feel and the performance aspect of it as well. So It's quite unique amongst its peers.
One thing that should, we can bring out now that is not, for those of you that are here that are beginners, you don't need to worry about this at all. But there are certain parts of the Flutter infrastructure that behave on an Android like an Android would, and behave on iPhone like iOS would. There's other ones like that slider that we saw that, it's a fair amount of difference between how Android works and iOS works. And they give you the ability to actually, I mean, if for some reason you want to run the iOS version on an Android, you can. If you want to run the Android on the iOS, you can. Or you can say, it's just called .adaptive. And what that means, it means that if I'm on an iOS, I'm going to do it the iOS way, and if I'm on an Android, I'm going to do it the Android way. So when you start out, you don't need to worry about that at all. But if you do want to talk about native feeling functionality, there are some things like how when you pull down on a list, how that behaves just magically works Android way for Android and iOS way for iOS. And then other things you can kind of pick and do it the material way, or you can do it the iOS way, or you can actually say, well, pick the appropriate one depending on what it is.
Should we find some more questions from the chat?
Let's see here. Oh no.
No.
Let me follow this one up. Let me follow this one up.
I see a question I want to answer about
Ruben chip. I love it. He's
So
awesome.
Yeah.
Well, let's
Ruben.
pass to Sarah shortly, but whoever asked the state management question, that is a great question. And there are chapters on that coming up in the book. It's a really big question, though, and hard to get to right now.
It's one of those
The book
questions
is
that you hear
awesome.
over and over and over.
Yes, I think that we have 10 minutes left in the stream, and we could do a whole episode about that. We could do a whole series about it. So we're just going to defer it for later chapters and move on to some simpler ones. I saw someone ask, would you see any potential issue for a banking app to use Flutter? And this is a
Simon can answer that one.
question.
I happen to know some people that might be doing that.
So
I've done it.
several banking
That's
apps
what I can say.
that use Flutter.
Actually,
So
what's the name of that bank in? Was it? There's one in India and there's one in Indonesia, right?
no, it's Brazil has New Bank, and then Simon, what are you working on?
No, there's one in India.
No.
Is there? Okay, correct me if I'm wrong.
So one thing to bring also, because I mean, you're talking security and things like that. Toyota is using Flutter for their cards.
One of the reasons why Flutter is actually chosen by banks, it is being chosen by banks and other companies, is because of the nature of what it does, and as it compiles to machine code. And you only get that when you're writing C and C++ code for both iOS and Android. So the end result is some binary numbers, should we say. I won't go into the details, but some binary numbers. And it's really hard to work out what it does. So it ends up being like a black box. No, it's really hard to reverse engineer. When if you're building sort of Swift or Java apps, it's easier to reverse engineer out what the app is doing, which is a security problem. And for banks, it's a very big deal. So one of the reasons why Flutter is quite interesting for them is that they get to have their cake and eat it, as it were. They can get to have the nice UI and everything else without spending lots of time doing it, and they get to build into a black box. And then there's advantages like things like FFI, which bring the ability to sort of bring in their own encryption libraries and other things that perform their security that is required for banking.
FFI allows Flutter to communicate with the C++ layer underneath.
Yeah.
An interesting one here that allows us to touch on material design and just in general, but how can you do this the iOS and Android way? And the short version is the Android interfaces are created according to what's called material design. It tells you about how big the area you touch has to be, what size different things are, what colors they are. It helps for color blindness. It helps you choose color palettes. All kinds of different things that allow there to be enough space in between components for it to be easy on the eyes, easy to use. Now there is the material design spec that Android uses. There's also the human interface guidelines. That's what Apple came up with. And an interesting story is I once asked one of Craig's predecessors, how is it that Google can create these apps that look exactly like Apple's without getting sued? And you know what he said? Legal won't let us answer legal questions. But no, the truth of it really is that Apple published the human interface guidelines, which is the shapes, the colors, the shadows, everything. And then they said, if you're going to make an iOS app, please adhere to these guidelines. And Google said, okay. And that's why it looks exactly like an iOS app.
But again, I'll point out the fact that it's there's to a certain level, Flutter takes care of it. Flutter's responsible for making the big things feel right for the different ones. But then there are certain widgets where it's, there is definitely an iOS way to do it, and you can choose to whether you want to do that or not, either with an adaptive widget or some other thing like that.
I just want to put this banner up there while we're closing out. We've got about 5 or 10 minutes left. So let's see. Other questions?
Adrian.
I do see a few other little things that we could go through. I've lost the question. Oh no.
Could TikTok be built in Flutter?
Yes.
Could it?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Isn't it built in Flutter?
No, that's WeChat that's getting ported to Flutter.
Okay.
Tencent, WeChat is being changed over to Flutter. So don't tell me Flutter is not ready for the big time. Between Toyota, WeChat, Ubuntu. Simon.
Yeah,
Wow.
also, sorry for interrupting, but also in Amazon and BMW now they have some openings for Flutter developers, and inside they are having some projects that they are building with Flutter.
They already
So
have
things are coming.
300 Flutter developers, don't they? I think they're the single biggest Flutter shop in the world.
Yes.
Who is?
Also,
BMW.
SE is also looking for Flutter developers too.
Yeah, and that is Bavarian Motor Works, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is there a future for Flutter 3D widgets?
Build one.
So
already
there's
did.
actually people in the community, they're actually doing 3D with Flutter and working on this, and it is definitely possible to do 3D in Flutter. It's pseudo 3D, so it's 2D. It's 3D projected into 2D. But you can.
Well, that's kind of what 3D always is.
It's always
Yeah,
is, right? You end
it's-
up with a picture on the screen, which is 2D, right? But it's
My
a bit more
monitor is
complicated than
2D.
that. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
But I think we might be seeing something in the future. But at the moment, there's no official 3D widgets in Flutter.
Yeah, the way a 3D game gets flattened onto your 2D monitor is that a bunch of linear algebra math that's very painful is done, and this 3D world in memory in the 3D game or whatever it is yes rendered as a 2D image, and that linear algebra is available to you. You can have kind of simple 3D effects very easily by using what's called the transform widget, and you can use that to skew things and create little simple 3D effects. But just like Simon is saying, I mean, if you really wanted a rich, entirely 3D app, you'd be using those transform effects all the time, managing yourself. And that's what a 3D engine does. So
There's an interesting question I've never seen before, and I'm curious. Because if I understand it correctly, Android Auto is just slinging what's on the device to the screen, is it not?
Yeah, it's just Flutter apps. So sorry, it's just Flutter Android apps. So anything you have that would work on, it's the same as like I have Flutter apps working on one of these, the Android smartwatches.
Mm-hmm.
And anything that you can build in Android, you can do with Flutter.
Since we're almost out of time, I just want to mention that there have been a lot of really good questions going by in the chat, and we don't have time. So please use those resources that we mentioned earlier to go out and ask the questions in the Flutter community Slack and Reddit, Stack Overflow. You can do it on Twitter with the Flutter Apprentice hashtag. Maybe someone will answer. No promises. But there's a lot of great places you can get your questions answered. We try and answer what we can, but it's
And there's
Show's
always
already
One other
hours
way to
long.
get us to answer your questions. Show up next week.
yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
come
Yes,
back,
exactly.
do the reading first,
And-
you get more out of it.
Yes.
And I think we need to come. Most of us are going to be here all the time, but I think we need to go ahead and send another thanks out to Mike for showing up,
Yes.
and
Yeah,
as the
thank
author
you,
of
Mike.
the chapters for today's. So, thank you very much.
Thank you. My pleasure. And thank you to everyone who's checking out the book and giving us such wonderful comments and feedback.
Just to set the expectation, the author of the next few chapters is on the other side of the planet. So this is sleep time for him. I'm trying to get him to at least come to the beginning of it. But people need their sleep. So we'll see if Vincent's able to join us.
All righty.
But thank you again, Mike.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you, Mike, again. It's almost more than 2 hours for you. Thank
Yes.
you.
So with that, let's all wave. And we
Bye.
will see you next week.
Can't wait to see you next week. Read
you.
chapters 3 and 4.
3
Get
and
the
3
book
and
if
4.
you haven't already, and learn about widgets. And we'll all meet back
And
here and do
do
it again.
Patreon. Do the Flutter community Patreon. Put the shout out there.
Coming
Got to
soon.
have that too.
Okay, everybody.
Okay.
Shh. Watch this.